All right. Hey, class. So here we are in Unit 6, and we're going to spend a little time talking about Star Trek The Next Generation. And that is going to primarily be your focus for this week. You're going to watch two Next Generation episodes, and then you're also going to watch a movie. So this week is going to be pretty TV movie intensive, episodically intensive. So let's go ahead and talk about Star Trek The Next Generation. Just going to give you a quick overview here. I want to start off with crew members and then we'll dive into some other details. So, Star Trek The Next Generation was, as you know, from the last unit, it was a reboot, and it was a reboot that structured some pretty parallel character structures. They weren't exactly the same, and this is where I'm going to break it down. So we have the same basic type of crew. We have a commanding officer, and the commanding officer here is Captain Picard. And so Picard is quite a bit different than our original Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk, as we know, is that traditional romantic hero, dashing, daring, got all the ladies. Picard was a little bit more serious, a little bit more measured, but represented a very strong leader and solid intellect. Now, here we have William Riker, who is the first officer, would be second in charge. And honestly, he is a lot more like Captain Kirk. He takes on that kind of romantic hero, at times a little reckless. He's still pretty measured, but more embodies more elements of that romantic hero than Captain Picard does. Then we have Geordi, and Geordi is the believe that's how it's spelled. Yep. Geordi is the chief engineering officer, so he makes sure the ship flies properly. And then we have Beverly Crusher, and she is the chief medical officer. And then this is where it gets really interesting. And so in the original series, we know that we had a chief security officer who was Russian, highly controversial at the time, thinking about the Cold War. But this time we have a Klingon, and in the original series, they were at war. Not the Empire, but the Federation was at war with the Klingons, and the war has now ended. And now we have a Klingon who was raised by humans as the security officer. And in the original series, the Klingons were often a metaphor for the Russians. In even though we had a Russian character for the Russians. And so here it's quite interesting that they take the metaphorical Russians from the 1960s and the heart of the Cold War, and they roll that into Worf being that in the embodiment of that security officer. So fascinating little play, especially very Star Trek-esque in its design. And then down here we have Data. Now Data is an android, and so just a few things, a few side notes that I'll get to in a couple of minutes. But over the next few units, it's going to be imperative that you learn the difference between a robot and an android and a cyborg and an artificial intelligence, and be able to use these terms in your writing and in your dialogue cogently. So Data is an android. He is very logical, and he takes on the Spock like element of questioning humanity, questioning emotional responses. And he's always trying to be, I'm going to say emotional response. He's always trying to understand and become more human. But he struggles with it because of his logical computer, artificial intelligence, android-esque perception of the world. And so he's the new version of Spock. And he happens to be the helmsman, the one who flies the ship. He also has some exceptional strength and durability. It doesn't come out all that much. He's not like a superhero, but he has a few scenes you'll see in the upcoming episodes and in the movie where he has some special abilities, but they never take a priority. They're just another tool in the arsenal. And then down here, we have the communication or the counselor. And this is Deanna Troi. Is there two N's there? Yep, Deanna Troi. Now, Deanna Troi, she is a Betazoid, and you may have picked up on this in the documentary from in the last unit. But she has partial psychic abilities. She can kind of see what's going on emotionally in other people. It's not like she can read their minds exactly, but she can sense what's going on. When we take a look here, we also have Crusher has a son who's in the show. There's also a bunch of other ancillary characters that move through the entire series, but this is the core cast and crew. So watch this breakdown as you're watching and compare it to obviously the original series over here, which we studied in the last unit. All right. So in this particular series, you're going to be watching two episodes. In the first episode, I believe is episode, it's the last episode from the third season. And it's the first episode from the fourth season. These two episodes are largely regarded as the most successful, the most important episodes of the Next Generation. And so that's obviously successful. That's why we're watching these, and they have to do with the Borg. And the Borg become a fascinating, reoccurring species that the Federation interacts with. And we obviously, they're called the Borg, but this comes from cyborg, because a cyborg is equals part human and part robot. And so there's a human shell that's then added onto with all these augmentations. And we're going to talk more about this over the next multiple units. But pay attention to the Borg. They're pretty interesting. And then the movie that we're going to watch also includes the Borg. And so all of these three sort of fit together within this Borg storyline. Another important component that's very unique to Star Trek Next Generation is the creation of the holodeck. And so the holodeck is like a virtual reality, fully immersive space that they go onto. And when they go into this reality, the virtual world that is created has a bunch of characteristics that need to be noted. One is that you can be hurt in this virtual space. Anything that happens there will happen to you permanently. You can also anything that you create in there, weapons, function in real life. But this is a form of the holodeck was originally designed as a form of entertainment for the crew. So let's say you wanted to go skiing, you could go to the holodeck and you could actually be in this virtual reality where you would actually be skiing. But if you broke your arm skiing, your arm was broken. And so it's this really interesting play with reality and virtual entertainment. So holodeck episodes are pretty interesting. Holodeck pops in a little bit in what we're going to watch for this unit. All right, so the episodes and the movies, I talked about these a little bit, but you're going to be watching Star Trek The Next Generation, The Best of Both Worlds, which is part one is from that third season, as I already mentioned, and then part two is from the fourth season. So make sure you check those out. The movie that we're going to watch is called Star Trek First Contact. And you all, I hope you enjoy this one. In their attempt to compete with the Borg, who are a technologically vastly superior species or cybernetic species, whatever you want to call them, they end up going into the past. So again, there's time travel, which not many Star Treks have time travel, but the two that I'm showing you were two pretty popular films. They reached a general audience. A lot of the Star Treks were really specialized, as I mentioned, into a particular audience who was very focused on Star Trek, and they loved it. But if you weren't a Trekkie, you were kind of like, nah. But this was one of the more popular ones. They go into the past and they come to Montana, and some of this is set in a post-apocalyptic Montana after the Third World War. And it's about the first time that humanity interacts, this idea of first contact, the first time that humanity interacts with aliens. And the alien, well, I won't give you any spoilers, but it's quite interesting. So I want you to check that out and let me know what your thoughts are. All right.